Welcome back, everybody, to the Lifestyle Balance Podcast. This is episode 38. Super happy to be back. Today we are with Selena, our guest from Opulife, and we're going to let her introduce herself a little bit and take it in. Let's go.
Well, thank you so much, Al, for having
Anytime.
me and having Opulife on here. So, again, my name is Selena Paglia. I'm a registered nurse by background. I've been in home care for almost 10 years now,
Wow.
which sounds kind of crazy. But I've been in multiple different positions. I've been in as a home support worker, personal support worker, as a nurse,
Nice.
supervisor, manager, and now I am the CEO and lead nurse of Opulife.
Congrats.
So Opulife is a home care company. We specialize in mainly senior care, but we help all people of all ages, and our mission is to keep people at home as long as possible. So age in place, optimize their life while they're home, and give them the support and love they need to stay happy, especially for seniors in their golden years.
For sure. Love that. Great intro.
Thanks.
Thank you. I think it was the most smoothest one. Usually people are like, what do I say? Where am I from? What's my age? I have 3 kids.
Well, you asked where it's from. So we're based out of Vaughan, Woodbridge, technically.
Awesome.
So the Italian demographic is probably our biggest clientele.
Yeah.
That's
good.
But we provide service all over York region, into Toronto, and extending into Peel. So we're in Peel, and we're actually extending into Simcoe area soon. So yeah.
Wow. So let's go off that since you mentioned that.
Yeah.
What's it like diversifying by the area? Is it different from, let's say, Vaughan, Peel, Simcoe, or do you find it's the same and it's easy to take the pattern and bring it over? Yeah.
Like you're saying, to expand
Yeah.
the company. I'd say the clientele is the biggest difference.
Okay.
So there's different populations of people in different areas, and usually it's by culture.
Yeah.
And to serve a specific culture, there's preferences and sensitivities you need to be aware of, right? So like the Italian culture, they like to be as independent as possible. So doing things for them does not go very far. It actually
I
can
see
affect,
what you're saying. Okay.
it can affect your relationship with it. So we encourage them to do things on their own, and then we step in when there's a risk or if something it happens. Obviously, we want to minimize that risk.
Okay.
But we try to respect that. In the more of the Canadian culture, we're more open to help, right? So they kind of want to they want you to step in and help them. They're okay with that. The Indian culture is a little bit different too. So in the Peel area, it's mainly the Indian culture. So that's what we're learning. So, and I want to make sure that our staff are aware, that I'm aware, so that we can be culturally sensitive, because that's part of building the relationship with the family, with the client, and that they trust you, right? Because we do want them to trust, especially when going into people's homes.
Yeah,
That's
I was
the
just
biggest
going to say
thing,
that.
right?
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
That must be interesting. And so when you guys are dealing with people who need these services, do you find that, everyone's service is usually typically the same, or it's like, you have to take each individual as a different, let's say, project?
So every person is different.
Yeah.
And that's the difference between Opulife and any other home care company. So we take your unique personal preferences, your personal unique needs, goals. People have health goals, they have aging goals. So we take that into consideration. And in the government field or in the government sector, they don't take that. You're at a certain age, you're at a certain risk. They just throw a PSW at you or a care worker. The care plan is quite general. They kind of tell you what the PSW can do, what you need. We don't do that. You know your family member the best. You know yourself the best. You've been living for it for who knows how long, right?
Yeah.
And we learn from them in order to provide that individualized care. So I don't know if I answered your question.
No, yeah. No, it makes sense. You guys are a lot more specific in terms of how to deal with someone than the traditional way.
Yeah, exactly. The government's very limited as what they can provide.
Yeah.
So because we're providing that extra level of care, we want to make sure that it's personalized to you. And I think every person wants that. Like, they don't want to feel like a number.
Yeah.
They want to feel like they are understood.
Yeah.
They're heard. They're being listened to. That they're being taken care of. Because it's very, as entrepreneurs, we can even empathize that it's very hard to ask for help usually, right?
Yeah.
So when they do come and ask us for help, we want to be sensitive and as best as possible.
100%. Yeah. Well said. And so, Selena, why did you get into healthcare in the first place? Let's go there.
That's a good question. I have to give creds to my family
Okay.
because they were the ones. So from a young age, I loved helping people. So I always gave back through like the Vaughan Food Bank.
Oh, nice.
I always participated in. There was in Toronto where we kind of worked with homeless.
Yep.
Now they're called unsheltered individuals. So I always loved giving back. And from a young age, I don't know, I said I always wanted to be a doctor. Although everybody said they wanted to be a doctor.
Yeah.
I think maybe over 50% of my friends even said the same thing.
Wow.
But it was the idea of helping individuals at the most vulnerable state, right?
Okay.
So when it was in grade 11 or even grade 10, when they start talking about like, what are you going to do? My mom was a nurse. So she's like, okay, if you want to become a doctor, which is great, you have to do something underneath, right? You're undergrad.
Yep.
So she's like, okay, well, usually people do life sci, they do some sort of health sci. She's like, just do nursing because it gets you in the door. You can actually help people.
Yeah.
Which is exactly what I want to do. And if you like it, you can continue with it. It's a career. If not,
you can use it towards another like medical.
Exactly. You have that experience. You have that firsthand experience. So creds to my mom for doing that because I had no idea what nursing was. Like, I don't think anybody goes into nursing knowing anything about it.
Yeah.
But then I ended up loving nursing and I stayed in nursing.
Wow.
There's two different perspectives of health. There's like the reactivity of health. So when something needs to happen or it happens already, so if a senior has a fall, you need to treat them, right? Whereas nursing is proactive.
Yeah.
So before something happens, let's look at the risks at 65. You do at an increased risk for falls. So let's prevent that.
Wow.
So I really liked that in terms of health, but it really came down to helping individuals, helping families. And I love that. And it comes a reward to me to say I can help an individual in their most vulnerable time. And it's not a job for me. I know you were going to eventually talk about balance, but I love working 16 to 20 hours days. It sounds crazy, but
if you love what you do, it is what it is, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's cliche to say that it doesn't feel like work, but it really doesn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's awesome. And so
one thing.
Oh, sorry to cut you off. Go.
Is there anything that you wish was taught when you were back in nursing that you think that they should implement now? Or wish that they spent more
like
time
from the
on?
nursing education, you're saying?
Yeah. And implementing it with the older generation.
So you're saying just the education itself or in terms of just seniors? Seniors.
Or were you really taught anything about seniors?
So I went to Ryerson, now called Toronto Metropolitan University. So now TMU. So when I was there, what Ryerson did a really good job at doing was having a full year in community health.
Okay.
So usually as a registered nurse, you focus on acute care, which means hospitals, clinics, urgent care, because a nurse is technically more experienced to be able to do that stuff. So that's the difference between a registered nurse and a registered practical nurse, an RPN versus an RN. So we're taught more advanced measures of health, but Ryerson put a whole year towards it. And that's where we learned about maternity, we learned about home care, learned about other clinics like, what's another one? Postpartum, for example, when you have children. So there's different things. One thing I wish they did more of was just preventative care, because we always talk for 3 years, we talked about reactivity, right? Yeah. Where we need to be proactive and be educated on how to maintain our health, how to optimize our health, how to not react, wait for something to happen, because it's very easy as a human being to wait for something to happen. In terms of seniors, I wish they would talk more about dementia and Alzheimer's, because it is becoming super prominent within our community, within even our families. And even as a nurse, we did some certifications, but I wish I knew a little bit more. So I had to do a lot of education after when I was in home care, because I saw a lot of Alzheimer's and dementia. So I was like, okay, I want to learn a little bit more. How behavioral issues, right? Yeah. I had somebody that came up to me and was like, your video actually helped, because on Opulife we have all educational content. So I was talking about how to react to somebody that's having a behavioral outburst when they have dementia, because they can literally come at you and start hurting you. So there's a way of dealing with that. And I put that out there. And that's stuff that I didn't learn in nursing school. I learned afterwards.
Through the experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's certain, I wish they had the more chronic, more education around the chronic diseases than it was all these acute diseases. But who knows if that's changed or not, because I know they've changed a lot in nursing too. Yeah.
Wow. Interesting. And do you find through nursing, like it's given you the most, let's say, knowledge when it comes to home healthcare?
No. I learned a lot in experience.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like school, I think everybody can agree that school provides you with that foundation, but it's not until you get into the workforce where you're like, okay, this is the real world.
This is how it works. Yeah.
This is how it works, right? And it's like entrepreneurship. If we're talking about entrepreneurship, I had an idea as to what it was because I grew up in entrepreneurship. My mom was an entrepreneur as well as my dad. Yeah. So I grew up around it, but I still didn't know. It wasn't until I was actually in it where I was like, oh, this is what it is. It's actually a lot harder.
Yeah.
So
sounds great, but
it sounds great. It sounds, and it's glorified on social media, but it's a lot tougher. And honestly, it's a lot more of your own development than it is your development of anything else. So nursing helped me with the foundation, but I still needed to learn more. And it was just like entrepreneurship. You still have to learn. You have to develop. You have to keep on top of studies. You have to keep on top of the best practices, right? Yeah. So, yeah.
That's the key to everything. You said it, like everyone says, is if you just keep learning, you're always going to be better at something. If you just, okay, I know this, and you're stubborn about it, and you just stop and you just keep working, you're not going to evolve and excel at anything. You
won't, especially if you're dealing with people, which a lot as entrepreneurs, we deal with people every day. We deal with our clientele. We deal with customers. We deal with reference sources, like referral sources. We deal with our own staff, right? Wow. Leadership has changed. Even me and Ben talk about it all the time, how leadership even 30 years ago to date has totally changed. How you manage somebody, how you work with somebody is totally different. Before, it was more of like penalism. Now you have to work with the individual. It's more collaborative. And you see the response right away. Even through our staff, they love the fact that we collaborate with them. For sure. They come with experience too, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Actually, I have a question about that. How do you guys, when you guys, let's say, source or you find people to work within, the industry, how do you guys source these workers? Like, is it like, okay, you have to have a certain amount of
qualifications?
Yeah, it depends on the position. And we go through a very thorough recruitment process to ensure that the individual is, the individual they're saying, because some people interview very well. But also that they are competent in their practices. So we have certain processes that is like, okay, let's check the personality. Let's make sure they're going to be reliable, right? That they can actually communicate. Then there's a process of competency in terms of practice. And then we put it all together, right? So we are very thorough in that because of the vulnerability of our service. So how we source them is just through experience, through connections, just through awareness of our brand as well. But there's a lot of people say that there's not a lot of healthcare workers out there. For PSWs, for nurses, there really is. It's just about finding the right ones. Wow. And that's challenging. For sure. So we spend probably about 50%, if not more, of the work we do every day on just recruiting. Wow. And that's to show that our practice is
big benefit in that.
Yeah, it's trust, right? It comes down to trust.
Yeah. Wow, very cool. And so, if I could ask some business side of things, because I'm curious. Well, first off, you did mention Ben, who's here. So, how is it working? I guess as like a partnership in terms of the business, and how did you guys come together to start it?
It's a good question. So, me and Ben are actually we come from a merged family. So our parents are both divorced, and his mom and my dad are together. Cool. And so that's how we got to know each other. But it was through our common values that we really came to grow Opulife and to create Opulife. Wow. So we wanted to make a difference in the work we do every day. That was through people, our love for people. And then my frustration with home care in the public sector. Ben saw it from the exterior and I was dealing with it from an interior. So he's like, okay, well, if we also like entrepreneurship, we have the same values, let's work together.
Cool.
And then Opulife was born actually on a flight where we were sitting down and we're like, okay, what can we do? But home care was always like the center of it all.
Yeah.
And then we just like was creating designs, creating the model.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was like honestly the most randomest thing, but
it was the best,
it was fantastic.
It was the best.
And you asked like how it is.
Yeah.
It has its pros and cons,
For sure.
right? Like working
everything.
with anybody is challenging.
Yeah.
Do we fight sometimes? Yeah, definitely. Because he comes from a business aspect and I come from the health aspect. So
Yeah.
me and Ben like to say like he's the brains and I'm the heart.
Cool.
And there you do need both, but different. You have different perspectives with both, right?
Yeah.
So do we clash sometimes? Yes. But what we really do is come down to our values. So we always say, hey, then what are we working for? Okay, well, our clients and our staff are always the center. Okay, how does this decision help with that, right? So with our foundational values has really helped because it always brings us back, right, to the positivity why we're doing this.
Nice.
Which is to make a difference. And
For
that's,
sure.
you have to have a common vision whenever you're picking a business partner, because if you're on two different levels, it's going to be tough.
Yeah.
And we've had people come to us and say they wanted to merge with us. And it makes me blush to say that because people show at least they see the value and the potential,
for sure.
which is great, but they don't have the same values as us. Like some people just want to do it for the money.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah. No. So I don't see it that way.
Right.
Yeah. Do we have to make a living? Do our staff need to make a living? Do we? Yes, of course. But it's not to drive money and drive profits.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Interesting. Love it. And so obviously I've seen you guys on social media. I saw that you guys are building a page, and you mentioned earlier how like you guys are showing educational content. So do you find that helps in terms of like getting, let's say, clients in or just putting more information out there?
So it really helps more. Like, yeah, it's only got us a couple of clients, to be honest. It's more for education to keep people informed.
Yeah.
We don't really do it to generate leads. I know in healthcare it's not as
it's
successful in that way.
Sure. Yeah.
But we don't do it like the purpose for that wasn't to generate leads. It was mainly to inform people, keep people informed on things that never really discussed at like a dinner table or even near the end of life. Like some people still don't have those discussions.
Yeah.
So we are trying to break boundaries and say, hey, have these conversations, be informed about this stuff, look at this stuff.
Cool.
Be safe with your health, and we want people to flourish in their health as well. So it comes 100%. From that passion as well. But it was mainly for, oh my God, I lost my train of thought now.
It's all good.
It was mainly to credibility. Sorry. It was mainly for credibility.
Fair,
so we both
there.
look very young. Like some people think I'm actually 19 years old. I've been on the subway once and someone's like, are you 19? I'm like, no, I'm not 19. And some people in the homes, the first question they ask me is, how old are you?
Really?
Sometimes.
Wow.
So I don't blame them because it's easy to be ageist in that way and say, hey, you know nothing.
Yeah.
So, but if we have this content out there and show people that we know what we're talking about, we have this passion.
And you guys care, exactly.
And that we care.
Yeah.
It really does help.
Yeah.
It does. And there's people that it creates a conversation between us and the client too. And it helps us even educate. Like we send it out on newsletters.
Oh, cool.
If somebody asks us about something, we send them. And even people like my friends ask me like, hey, Selena, I saw you talked about this. Like, can we have a chat about this?
Wow.
So it's like their family members going through it.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's also a connection basis, but credibility was huge.
And to go back to what you said, like, I think it's also the fact of like, being proactive. You guys are putting that information out there ahead of time versus talking about, okay, this is what you do if this happened.
Yeah. And our generation doesn't like to be sold to. We know when we're being sold to. Yes. Right. So to just put out content that's going to say, oh, call Opulife when you have this and this.
1-800 and figure it out.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's not going to be successful. Like, I don't even watch that stuff.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
If somebody's like trying to create a platform, like education is huge. And even I know Meta's getting on it. They know that longer content with more information, people that are actually being more engaged.
Wow.
as long as it's obviously engaging of a conversation. But
Exactly.
people like information.
Yeah.
So we noticed that even just through our reels and all
Yeah.
the content we put out. Yeah.
Cool.
What would you say like separates you guys from like other like competitors?
Good question. So in short, we're like a boutique company. So there's bigger companies in home care that are huge, and they're actually bought out by private equity.
Wow.
So not to say any of them, but the ones that are usually have the contracts with the government are owned by somebody big that are looking for profits.
Yeah.
For us,
Sorry.
Sorry, go ahead.
If you're with the government, wouldn't you have to follow their regulations?
yes, but there's no regulations around that, right?
Yeah, in terms
Home
of
care
who's
is
investing,
privatized.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So with the government, there's what's called home and community care. Now it's called Ontario Health at Home. They provide the funding to get the service, and then the service is subcontracted out to an agency or a company to provide the care. To have those big contracts, you need a lot of money usually, right? Because you're dealing with a bunch of referrals that come all at once, and you need to have staff around, and you need to have all these resources. So with the government comes limitations. So sometimes they're not focused on quality because they can't, because they're getting so much referrals and they just have to fulfill them. And that's okay. What we focus on is quality. So getting to know the client, getting to know their family, like I said, being very personalized to their care plan. There's stuff in our processes that make sure that staff are informed about and educated. So even just client-specific training we do. So if a client has Parkinson's, for example, we make sure that the staff has that training to be able to understand and navigate the situation. But a lot of it comes down to being able to know who you're talking to know who's you're going to be taking care of, and that peace of mind that comes with that. When you call a bigger company, sometimes they don't even answer.
Yeah.
Right? So to pick up the phone and say, hey, Selena, or hey, Ben, is what we want. So we want that connection. Yeah.
Love it. Very interesting. And so in terms of healthcare as an entrepreneur, let's say, do you find that it's, I'm not going to say competitive, but like that it's challenging with all these options of government and then being privatized and boutique style that you guys are? Or do you find that like there's ways to make yourselves, open and show that you're different?
So your question is sorry, say it again.
Like, is it, do you find that it's challenging to be an entrepreneur in the healthcare industry, let's say?
That's a good question. Is it challenging? Like I can speak on top of home care.
Yeah.
I would say it's more intimidating. The reason being is because you have these massive companies that have a lot of money behind them, right? And it's to approach those companies and say, hey, we can help. Usually they're like, you're a little ant, I'll step on you kind of thing.
Yeah.
And with healthcare, you need a lot of credibility too. So that
100%.
can be intimidating.
Fair.
And sometimes people are just straight up rude. That just happens in entrepreneurship. They want to either kick you or they put you down.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say, because of my experience in it, I know how to navigate it. So I'm very confident in it. So it wasn't as hard. Yeah. But I had people, when I left my corporate job, I had people tell me that I couldn't do it and that they would never do it.
Wow.
And I was like, okay, like why? And people weren't able to explain. So it came a lot from fear. And there's that intimidation factor, right?
Yeah.
And I was just like, I don't really care, because at the end of the day, time is the only thing we can't get back. So in my heart, I want to try. If I fail, fantastic, that's fine. At least I tried.
Yeah.
And I can always go back to my corporate job.
And it's always good to fail, right?
Yeah, and you develop.
You learn a lot.
You do learn a lot. You need to fail to develop.
Exactly.
And I tell people all the time, don't fear failure.
Yeah.
Because it's only through those difficult times where I've learned things. I've been pushed to do things, pushed my limits, show even myself and others that you can do certain things. So I would say healthcare is sometimes intimidating. Even the people in healthcare can be intimidating because there's a lot of education too as well. Like doctors, they have a lot of education, PhDs, and anyways. But I would say just owning a business is difficult. right? So
exactly.
you just have to have that confidence, be able to believe in your product. Because if you don't believe in it, no one's going to believe it.
Exactly.
They can see right through you.
Yeah.
And that's where we say, like, we have such passion that even when we're recruiting, our staff need to show passion, because then that trickles down to the care we provide, and it trickles down to the outcomes of the client. Sounds crazy, but
it's the truth.
Yeah.
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 And it's good that you guys are clear about it too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're very transparent. Like, even pricing, home care. I don't know why pricing is never on home care website. You go on any home care website, you'll never find pricing on there. Ask me why. I don't know. Like, you could buy a chair, you buy furniture, pricing's there.
Yeah.
Why? Because of transparency. You want to know what you're buying.
Yeah.
But in home care, it's not like that. So what me and Ben did was, we're like, screw the actual stereotype of it all, because I don't know if they're trying to all follow each other. I don't know. I have no idea. Pattern. But we're like, we'll just put it on. Finances is huge, right? You make a decision sometimes based on the finances. We want to know, we want people to know that it's feasible. If we can work with them, happy to do so. They give us a call. But we want it to be transparent, because that, even just showing your price, shows that even as an individual, you're transparent, and that allows trust. We want people to trust us. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. And so do you find, because the business is so community focused, let's say, because, you know, you're dealing with different communities, different cultures, and everyone, like you said, is dealt with differently based on that. Do you guys find, in the terms of the aspect of putting yourself out there, is it different on community? Like, okay, I'm going to advertise to this people one way, I'm going to talk to these people another way. Or is it the same?
You're saying from a marketing perspective? To be honest, we haven't got that far into it. If anything, we really tailor our marketing to the location of where we're marketing to.
Yeah.
So how we market in the community versus how in the hospital is different.
Okay.
Even in like a retirement home versus an individual home.
Yeah.
Because you're in different situations, right? Like in a hospital, it's more acute. You're usually dealing with a crisis. As if it's post-surgery. If you had surgery, you're now coming out of it. How do you recover? Is it a fall? Usually, and then in a retirement home, they have the support there, because you usually get care in a retirement home. Yeah. But maybe it's additional. Maybe you just need that one-on-one social support, that socialization, just that extra little bit. So there's different, we would market that way differently. But in terms of culture, do I recommend that? Yes, because we do things differently with each individual. Yeah. So is that something that's going to be about soon? Yeah. Yeah.
And I find that interesting, because I think we're one of the only countries that has that aspect to it. Because if you take Canada, we have our different cultures by area, and then you take America, for example, it's like, how do you treat them differently, you know? Like it's interesting to hear that.
We're blessed with multicultural.
Exactly,
right?
yeah.
And the marketing needs to be tailored towards that individual for them to feel. Like for us, it's all about comfort and trust. So for us to market towards a certain culture just shows that we have the knowledge and that they can trust us with that. Yeah. Still, everybody's kind of different in terms of their culture, but there's usually general values and morals and understandings. So, yeah.
Interesting. And what would you guys say is the biggest thing you're trying to do with the company, and let's say in like long-term plan?
So our mission is to make home care the center of healthcare, and that's just to bring services into people's homes so that they can stay home as long as possible.
Love that. Wow.
So we have right now PSW, nursing, and home support.
Cool.
And that kind of gets the non-medical with some of the medical, but do we want to get into more medical based? Yeah, because some people just can't go to a clinic. And you know what the healthcare tells them? Go to the hospital then.
Yeah. And then what's the wait time like?
Yeah, and then now you're in the hospital. And then when you're in the hospital, now they have to do further investigation. They're in they're in a hospital bed. Okay, now are they getting up? Usually they're not. And then for every day that a senior is in the bed, it's like us staying seated or in a bed for 2 days. Imagine just not moving in a bed for 2 days. Yeah. It's crazy. Yeah. You can never do that. You'd be sore. It would just, your body.
Exhausting. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
So we want to shift resources into people's homes. Like today we had a client that wanted a denture. She had a denture replaced. She needs it replaced. Yeah. And I was like, okay, I know a denturist that has a clinic. She goes, no, I need it in the home because my mom has COPD, has asthma, not ability, like I'm not able to move very much. The heat's bothering her with her conditions. I can't bring her out. I'm like, shit, like I wish we were able to do that. So it's like stuff like that where we want to be able to help individuals stay in their home comfortably without having to leave if they're limited to that.
Wow. Interesting.
There's a gap in that. And
for sure.
The government does a really good job at trying to fill those gaps. But we want to do more. We want to do more outside of like just the nursing, physician
the general
stuff. We want to do more than that and more towards the preventative health than the reactivity health. Yeah.
Love it. Mm-hmm. Love it.
And what would you say to like someone that's an aspiring young like entrepreneur, healthcare worker? Like what would you say to them? And trying to get into like the same space as you.
So if they want to go into
long-term care or home
care, I would say be comfortable with not knowing. And I know that's just very general to being an entrepreneur and just going down that route. But healthcare is a lot of change, and it's more change than we can even fathom. And you need to be okay with not knowing and asking questions and sometimes just looking straight up stupid. Because if anyone has dealt with home care, they know that it went from CCAC to the LIN to Home and Community Care Support Services to now Ontario Health at Home. That's all happened within the past, like, I don't know, don't quote me on this, but the past 10 years. Wow. They changed their name 4 times. And so you have to, and then I didn't find out about it until like through conversations. So again, I didn't know. And there was a point where I was like, oh, I didn't know about that. Yeah. And I didn't want to look stupid. I kind of wanted to look like I knew, but then I'm like, what's that going to be? What's that going to do? I'm just going to miss out on information that this individual has that they are willing to share. So that is what I would say, but also be confident in general, right? It's people will step on you. It is a competitive market, especially in home care. I recently had an interaction where there was 2 home care companies, and the lady, I was just talking about Opulife, and I guess she got defensive and started yelling about how we shouldn't be competitive. So I was like, oh, okay. Like, and it bothered me because that's not what our goal is.
To be, yeah.
But people, and then the fear comes that they're going to put you down because it happens. It happens. You have to be confident with it. That's what I would say. It's challenging, but it's like any entrepreneurship. It's challenging. You're going to need somebody to support you too, to help boost you when you're feeling down. Me and Ben kind of work with one another to say, if he's having a bad day, okay, I'll push you up.
Yeah.
If I'm having a bad day, he does the same thing. And we work with each other on that. There's not anything specific to healthcare, just entrepreneurship challenges.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Fair. Love it. So Selena, do you believe in the lifestyle balance, or do you have a lifestyle balance to begin with?
Do you want the theoretical or the actual?
However you want to take it.
Because theoretically, yeah, it's great to have balance, right? Like, I always tell even my staff, I'm like, you can't take care of somebody else if you can't take care of yourself. Yeah. Right? Fair. So I always tell them, okay, make sure you take your breaks. I always make sure that they have breaks in between their visits.
Nice.
Take time for yourself. Like, if that's going for a run, playing video games. I have my staff say she loves playing video games.
There you go.
Great, do that. Yeah. Or it doesn't have to be something as glamorous, but sometimes they like to go to the spa. So I like to make sure that they have those days to be able to do that. But is it always feasible as an entrepreneur? No. Exactly. So there's days where I work literally 20 hours straight, and sometimes Ben needs to come into our office and be like, Selena, are you okay? Do you want to eat? And like, Ben will attest to this. Like, he has to remind me to eat because I'm so dialed in. But I took the advice of what Hermosi said, where he said, some days, like, it's your balance towards what works for you. Exactly. Hermosi has like days where he does 24 hours and then sits in front of a TV watching video or watching Netflix for like the 16 hours. And he's like, that's okay. People judge me, but that's okay. Yeah. Whereas for me, I just try to work while I can. And then if there is those days where I'm feeling not as productive, being compassionate with myself, saying, hey, Selena, those days weren't, okay, you did 24 hours before.
Yeah.
Okay, you're not feeling great today.
Yeah.
Let's take it a little bit easy, dial back. And then if I can, go into the gym. There's one thing that I will say is trying to keep your body moving.
Okay.
Once you start to stop, if you stop, it's hard to get back into it.
Very.
So like I've been off for about 3 weeks now because I was just busy through Opulife, and trying to get back into the realm of things is hard, and you feel it on your body. So if there's one thing to like really stick to is just moving your body, and that could be something as small as going for a walk through your lunch.
True.
Or going to the gym if you can find time. But do I believe there's balance? No, it's going to be individual. It's going to be super individual, and there's no one answer that fits all, just like how care doesn't fit for one person fits all. There's no way I can say work 8 hours, take 2 hours a week. That's all BS.
It's not realistic.
You just have to know you. Like entrepreneurship is knowing your own boundaries, your own limits, and working within it. And if you need help, great. Have somebody that's going to keep you accountable. Like me and Bent, we kind of work together to say, hey, Selena, you haven't gone to the gym. Like, you should really go. Wow. And it's not to say in like a demeaning way. It's just to keep you on track. Keep you on that routine. You can get off track, and it's part of nature. It's part of being an entrepreneur. But if someone's looking for balance, they're gonna fail. Yeah, they're gonna fail.
Exactly. I agree to that.
And failure's not bad. It's just you're gonna fail yourself, and you're gonna feel so shitty. It's a different
type of fail. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Love it. Thank you, Selena.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you for coming. Guys, check them out. We'll link them everywhere. And this episode will be out within, let's say, a week. Yeah. Awesome. Perfect. Peace.